Okay, okay. Once again, a very, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of SP Abuja section. You're welcome to our January monthly technical meeting. The theme for today's meeting is domestic liquefied natural gas in Nigeria, fuel to accelerate the development of the country. My name is Ofofonono Akpan. My pleasure is to moderate today's event. Of course, today we are pleased to have a seasoned professional in the energy industry. He's the acting technical manager of Brunei LNG Lumot of Brunei, Dr. Pascal Ifaricho. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Confirm you can hear me, sir. You are muted. I cannot hear you, sir.
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting to speak at our technical session. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those who have joined the call, we kindly appeal that you share the link to your colleagues, your friends, so that they can be part of today's event. Of course, on the screen is the order of events. From 5 to 5:05, we have arrival of participants. And then I'll give the safety brief, and then I'll introduce and recognize some of our VIPs on call. And then we have a welcome remark by our section chairperson. And then we know the speaker. He does his technical session for about 30 minutes. And then we have 10 minutes for question and answers. We kindly appeal that when the speaker is speaking, you jot your questions and then you can ask them after he's done. Then we have a closing remark by our programs chair and then networking. So ladies and gentlemen, let's continue with the safety brief. The energy industry is very particular about safety. And so we'd like to appeal that for the course of this event, you may mute your mic when you're not speaking. We also appeal that you raise your hands if you want to speak. And of course, we'll give you the permission to speak. We have the chat features, which is the C for comments and Q for questions on the chat button. And then we also appeal that you ensure you can still hear the fire alarm with your headset. Be alert and aware of your environment. And of course, the last but not least, always stay safe. Of course, we believe you have a very safe deliberation today. We'll switch gears immediately to recognizing some of our section officials on call. We'd like to start by saying a warm welcome to our assistant programs chair on the call. We welcome Dr. Malami Mohammed. Welcome, sir. Confirm you can hear me, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Appan. Good evening, my boss, our resource person for this week. Good evening.
Good evening, assistant programs chair. Welcome to the call. We also see Pascal. We also see Adeyemi on the call. We also see Olisa on the call. And of course, Ugochukwu Duru on the call. We say a warm welcome to all of you. Please confirm you can still hear me.
Yes, I can.
Loud and clear. We can hear you.
Okay. So, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to switch gears immediately to a welcome remark by our section chair. However, our section chair is on the call and he will be ably represented by the assistant programs chair. We'd like to welcome Dr. Malami Mohammed for a remark.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Appan. So, on behalf of the section chair, I would like to welcome everybody, particularly our resource person for the week, which is Dr. Pascal Ifechu. So it's really a pleasure for us to have you here this evening. And I know, honestly, how busy you are, but despite this, you still honor our invitation. Thank you so much, Dr. Pascal. So for everyone on the call, please listen carefully. I promise you the event is going to be very educative, very informative, and also very, very enlightening. So please get your pens and jotters, because I'm sure you're going to end the program fully loaded with a lot of information, particularly around LNG, around natural gas, and other stuff like that. So with this, I don't want to take too much time. You'll hear from the speaker himself, which you can testify to me that, yes, the speaker is going to do justice to the topic. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity given to me. Thank you. Well done.
All right, thank you very much.
Back to you, Appa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Assistant Programs Chair, for stepping in for the section chair at very short notice. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue the event. Of course, welcoming our speaker. Of course, If you can see your screen, the bio of our speaker is on the screen. Of course, he's the acting technical manager at Bruni LNG Academics, a BSc in chemical engineering, University of Lagos, Nigeria, a master's in chemical engineering, University of Erlangen, Germany, a PhD in mechanical engineering, University of Duisburg, Germany, an MBA, of course, in renewable in view, Berlin University of Applied Sciences, Germany. Amazing. Professional career, refinery technologist, Shell in Germany, LNG operational support engineer, of course, in Shell at India, a principal process and acting head of process engineering in Nigeria, head of assets coordination, common facilities, Wani Island, head of technical services, process and terminal still at Bruni LNG. And of course, currently he's the acting technical manager of Bruni LNG, Lumut Bruni. His personal life, he's married to Dr. Mrs. Ifeanyi Cho, and they have 2 kids. He enjoys traveling with the family and is a Formula One enthusiast. Dr. Ifeanyi Cho is a firm believer that gas will be pivotal towards greater development of Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 30 minutes, we are so pleased to listen to him. Sir, please, the virtual stage is yours.
All right.
Dr. Malami, I see your hands up. Is there anything you want to say,
Yes.
sir?
Yes, Mr. Apan. I think we are honored to have the presence of the council chair in our midst. Maybe you could just give Dr. Amina Damadami a few minutes to bless the program. Good evening, ma. We are blessed. We are honored to have you in the meeting. Thank you.
Oh, all protocols duly observed. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have the council chairman, the first female council chairman of SP Nigeria Council on the call. Dr. Amina Damadami, warm evening to you, ma.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I actually quietly joined. I wanted to just listen quietly. I didn't know that you were going to pick me out, but thank you for the honor, and it's a pleasure being here, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot because I'm very interested in LNG, and all of that, and considering the government has declared this the decade of gas, I think all hands must be on deck to ensure that we are aligned with what the government wants to achieve. So this is really good and it's timely. And Dr. Pascal Ifeanacho, thank you for accepting to speak, and we look forward to getting a lot of nuggets from you. Thank you very much. And well done to the Abuja section team for putting this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Malami, anything again? Anything else? You see your hands up.
Yeah, it's just to appreciate the council chairman. We are truly honored to have you this evening. And just I feel it's very relevant to mention this. This afternoon, we had the groundbreaking of about 5 mini LNG projects in Nigeria.
Yes.
So I think it's quite relevant and very topical to mention. Yes. So yes, we are in the decade of gas. So we have a lot of government policies aligning to that. So I think we are very much on the topic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Council Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you, our speaker. Please take the floor. Thank you.
Over to you, Dr. Pascal.
All right. I want to share my screen. I'll just start the presentation and then see if I can share the screen. Just hold on 1 second. Let me share the screen first. Screen 2 is what I want to share. Okay, share. All right. No, that's screen 1 I'm sharing. Sorry, wrong screen I'm sharing. Do it again. There's a tab for that. Escape. Stop share. Okay. Go to this. This is what I want to share. Okay. All right. So we can go into the presentation. And then I'll just switch the mode here. Okay. All right. So thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to just put in my clock so that I don't overrun. For giving me the opportunity to present at this session. It's really an honor. I've known Dr. Mohammed Wanami for quite some time now, and we've had very good working relationship, especially when I was working at NLNG. So today, just a small disclaimer, I'm not advocating for any company or rooting for any majors or anything like that. I'm just trying to use open source knowledge to tell a story of what I think is a fantastic opportunity that's evolving within the Nigerian energy landscape. What you see in the screen is our carrier, proud Nigerian carrier LNG Abuja 2, which is on its way, probably on its way back, because you can see the ship is not well sunk. So this is more like an empty LNG ship. If it's fully loaded, the red part of that ship will be really underwater. It carries about 145,000 cubic meters of LNG and then takes it to anywhere in the world where it's required. So that's a huge amount of energy that it's moving around or floating around on the sea. And that's something Nigeria should be really very proud of. Okay, so quickly through the agenda, why LNG, I'll talk about the value chain. I'll touch a bit on the legislation. I'll just pinpoint them, so I won't go deep into that. Then I'll talk about the current LNG operations in Nigeria. And of course, Mohammed Maname just talked about the groundbreaking event today for 5 new LNG plants. And maybe I'll touch a bit on what that might mean. Then domestic utilization of LNG in Nigeria, especially in the power sector and in the mobility sector. And then some of the challenges that we have, and then some final tips and takeaway. The intent is to get us thinking. I mean, when I say us, I mean the engineers in Nigeria, right, who are at the forefront of this technology, to really see how we can harness, this technology, not just from a technical part, but also from a commercial part, right, to really make Nigeria a better place technically or technologically or development-wise. So moving forward, just a few explanations or a few terms that we're going to be using. So when we talk about LNG, liquefied natural gas, we're talking about, a liquid that is cryogenic is minus 161 at atmospheric condition, minus 161 C. So if it touches your skin, it's going to burn you. Contains primarily C1 and C2 plus. It can get up to C4, but anything beyond C2 is very strongly regulated because it depends on the market it's going to. It's not just about the heating value, it's also about what we call the density and the Warber index, because that's really what the end users really look at in selecting a certain LNG. And LNGs can come in different qualities. You can have LNGs that are coming from very rich sources, and you can have LNG that is coming from Australia, from places where they have coal bed methane that does not have any C2s or anything like that in there. So it can come in different forms. Then the next one is one that we are all familiar with, liquefied petroleum gas, LPG. So this is our cooking gas. In Nigeria, cooking gas is predominantly butane, C4. In other places, it's C3, like in Brunei, it's C3. And in places like Germany, where I am right now, it could be a mixture of C3 and C4, depending on what time of the year you're looking at. Then we've got compressed natural gas, which is basically the liquefied natural gas that has been turned back again into gas and then compressed into high pressure, so that you can use it in places where they have challenges with storing cryogenic liquid. Then, of course, we have our automotive gas oil, which is diesel and premium motor spirit. So these are the things that we are going to be looking at that are interplaying within the Nigerian context when we look at energy. So quickly on the value chain, I won't dwell too much on the pictures. The value chain for LNG basically is what we call, well to wheels, right? So it starts with a source of the natural gas. That source predominantly could be an offshore site or an onshore site. If you go to places like Oman, most of their wells are onshore, on land. Nigeria is a mix. We've got a lot onshore, but we also have quite a few offshore. Shell having Bonga, Total having Akpo and Amenam and the rest. So it's a mix in Nigeria, and Nigeria is really a very complex place when it comes to gas supply and gas distribution because we've got a mix of everything. So that gas is gotten from a source, usually somewhere where it is stranded, is not near any development. And the difficult task is to pipe that gas into a liquefaction facility like NLNG in Bonny or, Oman LNG or Brunei LNG. So that predominantly caused by pipeline. It's a high pressure pipeline, right? Typically in the excess of 60, 70 bar. Then the liquefaction facility does the following. First of all, it cleans the gas, or it removes impurities from the gas, predominantly H2S and CO2, if there is any. And then it conditions the gas to make sure that when it goes into the main cryogenic heat exchanger, where the gas is converted to liquid, right, that you do not have components in there that will freeze, like CO2, like condensate C5 plus. So you need to take those out in a separate process before it goes into the MCHA. When you now make the final product, you can re-inject some of these things back again, and it will stay in the liquid form. So when the LNG is produced, it's stored in big storage tanks, and then from those big storage tanks, very expensive tanks, cost upwards of $200 million each, they are now pumped into ships like this, and the ships now take them and sail all over the world, right? And then get to facilities where they are now regasified into normal gas and then sent via pipeline to end users. The value proposition for LNG is simply the fact that every 600 liters of natural gas that you are able to condense shrinks to 1 liter of liquid. So it's a factor 600 to 1. And that's why when you're carrying 145,000 cubes, you're carrying about 600 times that in terms of raw gas going out. So that's the value proposition. So the energy density is quite high on a kilo basis. All right. So looking at value chain, I like this plot. I stole it from one of the Shell catalogs. Now, this was basically showing the countries that were importing or import LNG from the 90s to the 2010s to 2020. And you see everything that is gray are countries that are not importing LNG. So, but you see Nigeria there, you see Australia there. So the question and why I brought this up is that if we are not importing and we are exporting, does it mean that we are also not consuming? Because you could also be exporting and be a consumer yourself, right? Like if you look at the United States right now, that has changed, right? It's no longer an import country; it's now an export country because fracking has become very significant, and now they are now a net exporter, even though they consume on their own. If you look at Europe, you see places like Germany that never imported LNG because they were so scared of it. They thought it was just a bomb waiting to explode. So they opted for the Nord Stream pipeline. That has now gone off with the Russia-Ukraine issue. Now they have hurriedly built 3 floating regasification. They're now importing LNG, and they're in the process of building new regasification terminals that will be up and running within the next 2 years to keep the businesses in the country afloat. So what it's basically showing is that everything prior to now was looking at outward exports to countries that are major importers, the Koreans, the Japanese, right? But more and more, we are beginning to look at internal markets, and you see why internal markets are really very important going forward. So if you look at gas projections, right, again from Shell report, they're basically saying that certain markets are going to peak. The Americas are going to peak in 2030s, which is what, just 5 years away. And they even mentioned places like Nigeria is going to peak in 2040. Now, this is 15 years away. And the question is, have we actually started the journey for us to now say that in 15 years we're going to peak with a population of 200 million and majority of the population being, under 21, right? Interesting thing is that if you look at the demand, right, electricity is still the major, right, demand, then buildings, all right. Of course, in Nigeria, buildings do not play because we don't do a lot of space heating. But you see transport is increasing, and that's really a very interesting part because you see now we're going to talk about LNG to CNG to LCNG and all that stuff. So that's one aspect. But even this electricity part is going to fall, right, based on the projections that we're seeing, because for some of the countries that have started to, imbibe or started to look into renewables, this is now becoming one of the sources of providing electricity. Countries like Norway have hit over 90% plus. Austria, even Kenya produces 90% or over 90% of its electricity from renewables, from geothermal. A lot of people don't know that, right? So the dependence on gas for electricity will go down, but the demand for gas continues to go up, right? As we see in the projections, and the supply has to continue to be there. All right. So if you summarize it, right, they are saying that the market is still upbeat, that industry heating and Asia will be the major drive towards LNG growth, all right? And this is looking at it from an international perspective. Gas prices are a bit tight, but it will be okay. And then finally, we expect that as the demand continues to grow, that there will be new gas supply or new LNG supply coming into the market. So they are looking at things like the Nigerian Train 7, the Oman Train 4 that is coming up, and all the Russian expansion that is going on in Baltic. Of course, you have the Qataris that are building mega structures. So everybody who has the capacity to produce LNG, who has got the experience, who has the capacity to produce LNG, right, is doubling down and making sure that they maximize their LNG production as much as possible and go into new projects, take new FIDs, right, because they clearly see that there is demand. And the fact that you're able to, move this thing around, right, with the kind of energy density it has, makes a lot of sense, and, it's quite profitable. So let's look at legislation in Nigeria, all right? But before that, our country, which we love so much, we know, for example, that, and don't quote me on these figures, they float and change. 9th largest gas reserve, we could be anywhere up or down that. 6th largest exporter, potentially we could be 4th because there are unproven reserves in Nigeria. But like was said at the beginning, we are in a decade of gas. This was the Buhari administration, President Buhari launched this just before leaving, and a couple of people worked on this. And one of the things that we were brainstorming on when this came out was looking at the kind of sunshine model, like a 10-year plan. And one of the clear swim lanes that was developed was domestic and regional, gas supply, and what we need to do to actually boost that, because we feel that that is going to be the catalyst towards development. So you basically have a country that has so much potential, has so much proven reserves, so much unproven reserves, all right, has a lot of experience, in the oil industry with over 50 years, but the country is still energy starved, right? I just came back from Lagos this morning. When the flight's about to land, when I was coming in, everywhere is dark. When I was leaving yesterday night, everywhere is dark. People don't even run their generators anymore. So there is a huge power problem. There are areas that have, better power supply, and they pay for that as well. And I think that's also right in making sure that, you match your energy consumption with what you really need, and, don't leave your fans on, don't leave your systems on, right? There needs to be, meeting each other at the halfway mark. But by and large, the country is energy starved, right? And if you look at the power production in the country, you basically see that it's nothing compared to the population of the country. So what legislations are in place, right? Of course, we have the almighty PIA, which took a long time to come in. I think the major thing about this PIA that is relevant to what we're discussing today is the creation of the NUPRC, which is the Upstream Regulatory Commission, and the midstream, so the NMDPRA, the midstream downstream production, Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Now, the fact that if you look at NLNG, for example, as a company which is in the midstream sector, it is still subject to these two because its source, right, or the source of its feed is in the upstream sector. So it has one foot in the upstream sector, and then, of course, a lot more in the midstream sector. So it's subject to regulations from these two councils. Then you have the Nigeria LNG incentive, which is the LNG Act, which was created to give it tax exemptions, custom duties. This has come under massive challenge over the years, but was a protectionist thing that was designed to help keep that company running and has really been helpful or beneficial to that company. Then you have the national gas policy, which helped with the infrastructure development, creating the viable environment for people to come and invest and allowing for market expansion. Then Associated Gas Reinjection Act of 1979 was the one that basically said use associated gas rather than flare it, because that was where we started from. The whole concept of liquefied natural gas or NLNG was basically to monetize stranded gas, which if it was not monetized, oil was a big thing. You just light it up and burn it away, and then you see all these flares even from space, right? And today you see that those flares have been significantly reduced, right? Even though there's still some of them, but a lot of the gas is now being monetized and turned into money. Then you've got the Oil Pipeline Act in 1956 that allows for for the construction of oil and gas pipeline. And finally, the Domestic Gas Delivery Obligation Regulation, which basically allows for a percentage of the gas that we produce to go into the dump gas network, right? And I know that there's a lot of issues with this, especially with respect to pricing and funds remittance and all that stuff. People have really, if you sit in places where people have discussed this, you know that there's still a lot of problems. But on top of that all, you have the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act in 2005, which basically split NEPA up and created the NERC that allowed for independent power plants and giving them licenses. And I've put this in yellow because this is one of the key aspects of what we're looking at today, where we'll say, look, with LNG, right, now looking more inwards rather than outwards, all right, outwards still, but more inwards this time around. What is it that we can actually do with LNG to help foster development of the country? Okay, so which LNG plants are running? Let me start with the ones that are not running. So we've got fantastic LNG plant in Braz, which was designed but has not taken FID. Lots of issues, depending on who you speak to. It could be political, it could also be technical. I know there's a couple of technical issues, especially around jetties being, having to go almost 12 kilometers into sea because of very low water depths that would not allow for LNG ships to come in. But by and large, that is an LNG plant. I think it's a ConocoPhillips cascade process that was already that's been designed on paper and can be picked up, if the conditions are right, and move on. I don't know much about OK LNG or local LNG, which is in Ondo State, but I know that a lot of work has also gone in there. That project was flagged at some point in time to be one that was going to go ahead, but for some reason that has also cooled off. So that leaves Nigeria LNG, right, which is the trailblazer. Nigeria LNG currently, right, if you look at in the scale of things globally, is maybe the third biggest LNG complex in the entire world. Most people don't realize that. Of course, the first is Qatar Gas with about 70-something million tons per annum. Then the next one, which is still debatable because of whether their trains are run or not, is Malaysia LNG with about 9 trains and about 30 million tons per annum. Nigeria LNG currently has 22 million tons on 6 trains. And then the 7th train, 7+ train, because it's 2 trains, 1 half train and 1 full train is coming in. And that is going to give it an additional 8 million tons, boosting it up to around 30 million tons per annum. So at that point in time, it would either overtake Malaysia LNG or just continue to maintain its third position. So in Nigeria, we have the third biggest LNG complex, right? Even if you look at other places like Chenia and look at the Russians, they're typically in the order of 8, 10, 12, 14 million tons per annum, but none exceeds the 22. Brunei just 7 million tons per annum. Oman is about 14. So it's like that. Then we have Greenville LNG, right? Which is a company that I will talk a lot about, which is a very remarkable company, very audacious, very courageous, very visionary, right? Saw a loophole in the system, is trying to plug that loophole. But despite there are 3 trains and 0.8 MTPA. So remember, Nigeria LNG does 22 MTPA. This company, Greenville LNG, does about 0.8 MTPA, right? In their phase 1 and 3 trains, and their phase 2 is supposed to bring 1.09, bring them up to 1.095. But that is still just scratching the surface of the demand for power in Nigeria. And I'll talk about that later, right? And of course, Nigeria, the NNPC, which is a parent company, has given permission for 2 FLNGs. One is going to be by UTM Oil, and I think I don't know who runs the second one. But by and large, we basically have in play today Nigeria LNG and Greenville LNG in the liquefaction process. They take raw gas, right? They process it, they turn it into liquid, and then they send it out. Nigeria LNG typically out of the country, but everything they produce in terms of LPG C4 goes 100% into the Nigerian market. Greenville LNG sells everything within Nigeria. All right. Now, utilization. So I want to focus a bit on Greenville LNG, right? These people, they're somewhere in River State, and they started their operation, right? What they do is what is called a virtual pipeline. Now, everybody knows that a lot of the industries that we have in Nigeria, right, require power, right? And because of the, poor power production in Nigeria, distribution, whatever you want to call it, these people have to rely on generating their own power themselves. Now enter this company, Greenville LNG, which offers end-to-end value provision of energy to their customers. So what do? They not only provide them with a fuel, which is LNG, they also help them do the switching, right? Or put the infrastructure necessary for them to be able to use that LNG to make, to continue to power their plant effectively, right? And I'll tell you later where the values are or why somebody would decide to not ditch, bring in this new fuel in when they are predominantly running diesel, for example. The interesting thing about LNG is that most systems that can fire petrol or diesel can also fire LNG. There is no liquid in this world that burns. None, even petrol. Everything that burns is in the gas phase, right? So when you talk about flashpoint, it's about you being able to vaporize to a point where you have a flammable atmosphere, right, with oxygen, and you now have an ignition source. Diesel, on the other hand, you need to get to the auto ignition temperature, and that's why you need to have pressure in there, all right, and then bring in heat to be able to play with pressure and temperature for you to get the auto ignition temperature. So these are the plays that you have in the various engines, and that's why in diesel engines, the pressures of those diesel engines are very high, typically up to about 50 bar. Petrol engines are less, maybe 6, 7, 8, depending on the kind of cars you're driving. Now, if you remember before, we have this LPG autogas, right? Now, if you take LPG C3, C4, you cannot get pressures more than 11 bar. So LPGs were always retrofitted to petrol cars, but were never retrofitted to diesel because it wouldn't work, right? But enter LNG, right? LNG can be downgraded, right, to petrol, can be downgraded to diesel, right? Because it starts, if it goes into the gas phase, it starts at a very high pressure, and then you can actually reduce the pressure down to whatever you want. But looking at some of the places where this Greenville LNG goes to, they go as far as Sokoto, right, to Boa Cement, and I think Boa is one of the LNG facilities that was opened up today. What you see also Julius Berger in FCT, and then you see Sumal Food in Oyo State. So they are spread. They go to the north, they go to the west, and of course they have some other customers in the south, and southeast. Now, what you see, basically, you see storage systems like you see here, the white tanks here, where they can basically store their system. And then you see ambient air vaporizers, what we call AEVs, which is basically used with air to vaporize the LNG into gaseous to natural gas, right, high pressure, which will now be fed into the combustion systems. Right, these vaporizers are not very effective because when the fins get clogged with ice, they don't conduct as much. So typically when you design them for a particular load, you have to design them with maybe 2 times, 3 times the capacity so that when it's fully, iced up, it can still provide you your required flow rate out to your combustion system. So they've been able to do this value chain end to end to their customers, right? And their customers are happy. And of course, you see a lot of CNG stations that are popping up. Now, these CNG stations, right, are basically LNG that has now been vaporized into compressed natural gas. Now, when you store LNG in vessels, right, depending on the kind of vessels you have, you could go up to 6 bar, right, in terms of pressure. But when you talk about compressed natural gas, you are talking about the minimum of 240 bar. And that's one of the major concerns people have about that, because you're driving now with 240 bar, right, tank in your vehicle, right? Because gas is compressible, and the only way for you to be able to accommodate a large amount of gas is for you to go to higher pressures, right? And then you can now step it down and then use that pressure over time to fuel your vehicle. So a lot of industries, right, showing you that they prefer to go to LNG. And this virtual pipeline thing is the model that Greenville has started, basically saying I cannot lay pipelines to everybody, right? But what I would do is that I would take natural gas and convert it to a form that is easy to transport. And then instead of building pipelines, I will use the trucks as my pipeline and send it to different parts of the country where it's needed, and constantly. And if you travel along the road in Nigeria, you will see hundreds of these vehicles. A few years ago, I was traveling from Benin to Cocoa, and I was surprised to see several of these vehicles on the road, going to all parts of the country. So this is really, truly working. All right. So they also have other big ambitions. They're already combining with Nasarawa state government to build energy hubs, Enugu state government as well. They're now trying to build like a kind of mini stations, so that their trucks will not have to travel, from Port Harcourt all the way up to Sokoto and the other places. They will now, transload in places. So they will put cryogenic storages in different parts. Expensive, because cryogenic storage are really very expensive because of the quality of the material you need to use and all that kind of stuff. So, but they clearly see a market in there, and they see that as a strategy for them to actually move big. And just look at this type of strategy as a strategy similar to when Nigeria had fixed lines with Nitel, over 990,000 lines for over 100 million people. But with the advent of mobile phones in Nigeria and cell sites everywhere, it blew up, and now we have over 80 million subscribers on mobile phone in the country, right? From a place where we're at 1 million, and everybody can afford to buy a phone today. So going into small scale, right, energy hubs, right, is probably the key to go, and there's a lot of advantages to that. Now, on the other side, Nigeria LNG, where I used to work, they are not also sleeping, right? They've also been looking at this and saying, well, our model has typically been, take the LNG and sell outwards. But what if we start to look inwards as well, right? And so Nigeria LNG embarked on its own journey to start looking at creating something similar. But right from the word go, they decided that they were not going to do trucking. So they were going to provide LNG at its doorstep for trucks to come and pick up. So that's an opportunity that is coming up, and that project is fast. So I was part of the design crew which designed that system for Nigeria LNG. And when we finished the design, one of the things that the management said was that, we need to go and learn from people who have actually done this or are doing this, so that we can copy from their mistakes. So we went to Australia and we visited 2 plants. We visited Woodside in Karata, and we visited EDL, which is a very small company, very impressive. Tiny. I've never seen any LNG plant as tiny as that before, right? They take natural gas from the trunk line somewhere in Australia, right? They have 6 pressurized bullets, and they make LNG, which they put in trucks. And the truck that you're seeing behind me there carries 2 other bobtails, right? And they travel 1,500 kilometers in the outback and supply LNG to mines and all kinds of businesses that are there that have to produce electricity 24 hours, and there's no grid because it's just 1,500 kilometers away from nothing, right? So LNG is planning its own, right, and it's advancing in that process, and this is premised on the fact that the Bonibodo road is going to come. So eventually, when this is done, this will be an opportunity for people to be able to come in and pick up when whatever marketing strategy has been agreed. The other thing LNG is also doing is that as part of the Trade 7 expansion, they are building a third jetty, and that third jetty is designed to be able to, load small cargoes, right? Not the huge ocean-going cargoes, but more like the 3,000 cubes, 4,000 cubes that can go through the inland waterways, to hubs like this that Greenville is looking at, and then supply people who need it. This is going to be a game changer because with this, you can actually take out all the pressures of the roads, the traffic, and every other thing that's associated with road transportation in Nigeria, and basically use the inland waterways, maybe the River Niger all the way up, and then have places where you can actually do this. So that's another model that is coming up, that's people can tap into when that jet is fully commissioned. But it's designed to be able to load smaller jetties. So the loading arms are designed, for those low loading and able to go down to levels where smaller ships are going to be able to come in. Okay, so why are we doing all these things? All right. Is it just because LNG is available in Nigeria? Why all of a sudden, after 20 years of operation, we're now starting to look inwards? Why didn't we do that from day one? So there are a few things that have happened. All right. The first thing is that since the deregulation of the petrol sector, of the energy sector, with the price of petrol and diesel going up, one of the things that was astonishing was that a few years back we had I think it was during COVID, there was LNG was priced in the global market below its cost price. And there were people that were willing to sell just to keep moving, right? So we came out of that, and then there was, of course, the Ukraine war and all that stuff, and then the price skyrocketed to the point businesses are being able to do they are now doing better than before and are able to meet their business targets even before the end of the year. But what we found out internally is that the amount of money that we are going to be happy to sell LNG globally, right? When we come in and have even a further markup on that value and compare it to the same energy value we're going to get from diesel, right? We are a factor 3 less, 1/3. So just for sake of discussion, if you're going to pay 600 naira for 1 MMBTU of diesel, right? The same 1 MMBTU, which is the heating value you get from the product, with LNG will cost you just 200 naira. That was the big shock for us. So depending on, and that value shifts, but there was a significant, and that's why you see the Bua Cement, the Julius Berger's, because if you're running a business that is already, 50, 60% OPEX is on energy, and this is the one thing that brings that price, by factor 3, then of course, you would embark on that, it's a no-brainer for you, right? And then, sign a long-term contract and go into that, because, the diesel price is not going anywhere, So that's one of the things that, is pushing this. The second thing is the energy density. We talked about energy density being very high, all right, on a kilo basis. So because of the low density of diesel, of LNG, if you take a kilo of diesel and you take a kilo of LNG, you get more energy out of a kilo of LNG than diesel, right? And that's the thing. So if you're able to, move it, like transport it as liquid to different parts and then gasify it, you're able to actually push more at a given point. And that's why they call it a virtual pipeline. The other thing is that, it can work in small scales. It doesn't need you to go and set up a big refinery, You can put it up a small, like a one-room thing that uses single mix refrigerant, uses and then produce very small amount. It's really scalable downwards. So you can actually take that opportunity to look at what you can build, right? And there are places where they've built very tiny modules and they just keep replicating them, if they want to grow, if they see there's need for expansion. So looking at all these things, there are a lot of opportunities that people can come up together, and put smart business concepts, especially around power. You see a company called Watsila that does a lot of power solutions, and they can tailor anything for you on LNG, right? So we should be looking at it more from a value perspective, right? Where people can come together and say, look, we understand that there is a need at this particular location, and we know how to bridge that need, and then we provide the end-to-end value, right? Whether be it power for industry or be it power for mobility, all right? Okay, LCNG for mobility, very interesting. A few years ago, I was in Egypt. I was with my family, we were on holiday. We got into this old taxi, right? Guy was driving, the guy said, please, I need to buy fuel. I said, okay, no problem. He goes into the, I see it's a CNG station. I said, this car runs on CNG? It's an old 504. He said, yes. So what they have done is that they've been able to, build conversion kits. And then he showed to me that he has petrol in his tank for emergency, but the price of petrol, again, in Egypt is 3 times as much as CNG. So anytime they have opportunity of buying CNG, they buy CNG, right? And if they run out of CNGs in the middle of somewhere, he just basically flips a switch and then continues to work with petrol, So that's a model that I have not seen being replicated in Nigeria, right? A few people are starting up with CNG, LCNG, a few manufacturers are also, introducing CNG vehicles. But this is something that would significantly reduce the exposures that we have right now and bring down the cost of transportation if we're able to imbibe it. So, and there's a lot of ecosystem support jobs that are attached to it, whether it's in testing, training, even gaskets, anything, right? If you just open that up, you basically open up a new ecosystem, that would really boost development within the country. Rail transport, the same thing. So there's a lot, right? Maintenance, training, there's a lot that can be done if we can open up this section. So let me quickly run to challenges, all right? So if we're talking about bringing in LNG into Nigeria or using LNG more within the country, the first thing that we hit as an obstacle is high switching cost, right? If you tell anybody now to go and switch to LNG, they'll tell you who's going to pay for the storage, who's going to pay for the gasifier and everything. And that's where Greenville was able to deal with bigger companies because they can put that up, right? And say, sign a 20-year contract with me. I'll put all this up for you, and then I'll make up my money gradually over the 20-year period, with sale of LNG to you. It's a risk, but yes, that's what they have been doing. I don't know what the terms are exactly, but they've been able to help companies make that transition easily. So being able to transition that switching cost to even, the ordinary man on the street is something that business people can come up together and look for a way to do that, to take that away from them. It's like today, if you want to buy a bag of rice, you can't afford it. You go and buy a half bag or quarter bag, or at the end of the day, you can eventually go and buy 1 cup, right? Somebody has been able to, bring it to a point where you can actually get to the end consumer, in any form that they want. The next thing is skills. This is a new territory for us. Dealing with cryogenic liquids is not a joke, right? Like I said, it's volatile. It gives skin burns, right? And it can cause asphyxiation because it vaporizes rapidly. So having the technical ability to handle this requires significant training, which is not something you can just go like you see people taking LPG bottles and turning it and transferring. They're just risking their lives because they don't know what is going to happen. But you can't do that on cryogenic systems. You will burn yourself if there's an accident and there's really, no way out of it. Then regulatory framework, needs to be tightened, just to make sure that we do not have all kinds of, side practices, bad practices, because that will put fear into the public and people will not be able to pick that up. So that needs to be tightened. Then access to finance is also in it. So if you want to put up something together now and you go to the banks now and everybody's asking you to bring 25%, 30%, interest over a period, then of course you might not even be able to realize that because starting you might want to build a customer base and bringing people in at low cost is typically the way in. So if you don't have, good source of low cost finance, right? It's really a hindrance because, and then business models, right, that government will or states or cities will have to look into, give tax waivers, grants, give people land to do something, right, all for development. That's also a strategy that is not firmly set up, and it's something that if in place could really help move forward. So in concluding, right, like I said, we do have a country that is very rich in gas, and that country is really suffering from energy shortage right now. Anywhere you go, energy is a big deal, right? Like I said, I was in Nigeria recently, and every Uber you get to will go and buy 5 liters and drive, and then buy another 5 liters, and that's the way they manage it these days because they don't want to just buy full tank or half tank and then just end up driving it. So they just tie it to whatever business they're doing. It's okay, but should it be like that, right? Then people need to come out and look at how they can bridge gaps, with smart business ideas. And smart business ideas is not invest today, reap the benefits yesterday. it needs to look at something that follows a time, like a proper time curve, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, right? And I know planning with in a country where things can destabilize very rapidly is very difficult. But creative ideas can actually work, right? Because the only thing apart from food that people will constantly need is energy, right? And people can do away with all kinds of things. They can do away with fun and drinking their beer or anything. But when it comes to food and energy, this is something they will need. If they are not able to have power, they will need candle. If they don't have candle, they will need lantern. They will need something, right? Or they will go and charge their phone somewhere to be able to open. So they will need energy in one form or the other. How do we provide that energy to the masses? Then, support structure for domestic LNG, right? Like I said, will create a whole new ecosystem of jobs, right? Countries that have imbibed it, like in Egypt, like I said, there are all kinds of things, from people making all kinds of pressure cylinders, people doing testing, people doing marketing, people doing all kinds of training, maintenance, a lot of things are there, you know. And then if we can focus on power and mobility for the first, phase, right? Then those two sectors are the sectors that are going to, leap or pull everything else, agriculture, education, healthcare, along with it. Because those two, power and mobility, are really what, whenever something happens in those sectors, you see that impacting immediately on food prices and everything. So if we're able to harness all this, I believe that our country, Nigeria, can actually, move into a better space when it comes to development. So let me stop at this point, and take any questions from anybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pascal, for that amazing lecture. You agree with me that he did justice to the topic. Of course, Nigeria and everyone needs energy. Please, I would like to see your virtual applause on the chat box and, of course, your questions. If you want to ask a question, you can also raise your hands and we would unmute you and then you can speak. I can see a hands up. Patrick Sustainability has a hands up, so I'll allow you to speak first. And then we have Adeyemi as a second hands up. So I think both of you have questions or comments. Okay, the third person that will speak after the first two I've mentioned is Samson Okumoko. Jojo's three hands up. Okay. I'm pleased to say that we have our section chair who joined during the meeting, Dr. Kechiko Kafo. Pleasure to have you on the call, sir. We also have our programs chair. Dr. Kechiko, can we hear your voice, sir?
Yeah, thank you so much, Akan. I was caught up in the meeting supposed to end earlier, but somehow late, so I had to one of. Thank you, Pascal. It was quite an exciting one. So, market. Be sure after now. Take it further. Actually, great.
All right, sir.
Okay, and of course, Professor Kapaya Tademi, thank you. We see you on the call. Who also joined. Okay, the first hands up. Patrick, Sustainability, Ezenachi. Can we have you speak? You have just 60 seconds for your question, please.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Confirm you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear, Patrick.
Okay, so thank you for this presentation. So very quickly, I just want you to throw more light on what you mean by virtual pipeline. Then secondly, you hear people saying something about converting their bottles from whatever it was to CNG bottle. So I'm always confused and concerned when I hear that. So how safe is that? Your technical and engineering understanding. Thank you.
Okay, I got a question. So first one, virtual pipeline. So you know what a pipeline is. Pipeline is something that connects a point A to a point B, and it can be very long, right? Can be underwater, can be above ground, The limitations with pipeline is that it typically takes you from one customer or one source to one customer, right? It's not flexible. with a virtual pipeline, right, you are still able to move products from A to B, but you can also move from A to C, A to D, A to E. So you're not limited because you have not laid any infrastructure on the ground. You're actually using trucks or ships, right? So when you have that system where you are basically taking from the source and going to multiple customers, then you call that a virtual pipeline because it's similar to a pipeline, right? But not a physical pipeline. That's why they call it a virtual pipeline. It's a standard terminology for that. So if you Google that, you also see that. Then on the conversion, yes, indeed, your concerns are very valid. And that's why you need to have proper regulations. An LPG bottle, like I said, that people will go and slap onto their car, that it was popular as far back as the 70s, would typically have something around 10 bar right in there, which is still a lot, all right? And LPG is even more dangerous than LNG. But on the CNG front, you will need to have 24 times that, 240 bar, right? For you to be able to have an appreciable amount of gas that can maybe you can drive for 400 kilometers before you get to the next refueling station. Now, it is typically not a problem, right? Because we've got in Nigeria today LCNG trucks that are running, we've had this experience for over 25, 30 years. The most important thing with everything technical is that one, when you are bringing in all the elements that form that system, your hoses, your bottles, that they meet the minimum standard, right? So if you're going to have a 240 bar gas bottle, it should be for 240 bar design and tested, not for 150, right? If it needs to go for maintenance every 2 years, you should not say, oh, I don't have money, I'll go and do it after 4 years. So it comes with a lot of, discipline, right? And once you keep to that discipline, you will be able to enjoy that system because remember, the value it gives you is a third, right, of the costs that you have if you go for your traditional system. So it is doable. It's just making sure that, and that's why if you live abroad and you drive vehicles, your vehicles will have MOT every 2 years. And in that 2 years MOT, you take it to an independent body that basically does that verification. And if it doesn't pass, you don't get your car back on the road. So this is where regulation comes in and infrastructure comes in, systems come in to make sure that people are not put in the line of fire as a result of them being able to switch to this type of energy. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that does. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
With Dr. Malami Mohammed, you see your hands up. Please go ahead, sir. Dr. Malami Mohammed, are you still there? Okay, Adeyemi Oyelami, please go ahead. Adeyemi Oyelami. Okay, please. We are able to hear you.
Okay, Dr. Pascal, I appreciate the very detailed presentation that you have given to us today. It's a very good one. Thank you so much for that. I could practically relate with a lot of things you have described. The question I have is, so I'm from the power sector. I've always been in between gas and power. So I just want to ask you, probably a bit out of what you focused on in your presentation, but I'm more concerned about the future of power within Nigeria. So with the current situation of gas to power, what do you think is the way forward? You mentioned NLG is trying to look inwards. The challenge so far has always been around liquidity, getting the funds back up the value chain so that those who want to supply locally, of course, it will be profitable. Everyone is in business. So what do you think is the way forward?
Okay.
I think I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So it's a very complex question. This is more geared towards the economists, but I have a few take on this. First of all, if you drive around the country today, right, and look at rooftops of houses, right, you will see an increasing number of solar panels that are put on houses today. Increasing number. If you go online, you will see a lot of people marketing inverters that you can charge with anything from solar to when you have power, and then gives you power to run, right? So Nigerians are looking for a solution, right? The problem is that because of the where we came from, so it's a behavioral problem, where in the 70s and the 80s, right, fuel was nothing, power was nothing, right? So we could leave, you leave all your lights on, you leave all your ACs on, and you go away, right? Here in my house, here in Germany, everything I use, right, is A++ in terms of power, right? I monitor the power production in my house and the power consumption in my house to the last kilowatt hour. I have a system here where I harvest electricity. I have a tariff system where I can pay into the grid when I'm not using, all right? And when I'm buying very expensive. So you have to use a combination of pricing for people who genuinely want to do business, right? They want power, right? They would factor that power cost into their business, right? If that power is available. But there are others who feel that they want to cut corners. They want to go and jump poles. They will not pay their bills. And that's why you see that prepaid meters in Nigeria is taking up shape. But even at that, the major issue we have, right, is still being able to, generate and sustain power. And going for big mega projects, I don't think is going to solve the problem. Nigeria has never been good with any big major project. So what will eventually work is to have very small scale mini smart grid projects which will target localized communities, estates that are coming up, places where people are more inclined to pay if, right, the power is available. And you see that happening already in Lagos with all this, they're banding band A, band B, and everything that is happening. And you see people complaining now that the cost is a lot. But when you go and buy an air conditioner, right, that is running nonstop, but doesn't have inverter technology, right, you find that at the end of the day that it might not be comfortable for you, might not be good for you to run that air conditioner for a very long time because the amount of units. So for the first time, Nigerians are able to see how much power actually costs when they buy credit and they see that credit dwindle over a period of time. And that's beginning to make people to rethink the way they use power. So availability on one side and us conditioning our behavior to be able to, use power as prudent as possible is what is going to help us with the power sector, right? And I see going forward, right, because Nigerians don't like to pay OPEX costs, more and more people making investments in the solar area, even if it means them getting limited amount of power over a period of time. If you continue to have smart, things, maybe systems that will gather solar from multiple houses and then, make a mini smart grid, things like that are already in the pipe work. There's some Indian companies that are doing that already in Nigeria, right? You will see that at the end of the day, people will pay, right, if they see that it's there, and if they see that compared to running a better pass my neighbor or a diesel generator, this is much more affordable, they'll go for it. So it's a complex solution. I'm not saying that I have the answer, but the answer is also not a silver bullet. It's a combination of things that needs to be done for us to be where we can say we now have reached sustainability when it comes into the power sector.
Thank you, sir, for taking our time to respond to that question passionately. Okay, the very next, Samson Okumoku. You have a question? Please, we'd like to hear you. 1 minute for your question.
Okay, yeah. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Pat.
Samson Okumoku, are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, he's speaking already. Go ahead, sir.
Okay,
Dr. Malani Mohammed, over to you again. Are you hearing me now?
Hello, I'm speaking already.
Okay, please.
Okay, thank you for the amazing lecture. Yeah, my question is kind of similar to the last person. I'm also into the gas to power industry and some of the challenges that we are having, especially for manufacturing companies in some states where can hardly get gas, like Abuja, Kano, and some northern states and all. challenges is one, how to get gas, then two, funding as well for these manufacturing companies and all, because power is really a big problem in Nigeria, especially in the manufacturing sector, manufacturing industries. And so I just want to ask, what's the way forward for these manufacturing industries getting power through gas, and also for their efficiency of their production and also. Thank you.
Yeah. So don't quote me on this number, but there was a time we were having some discussion with some people in Greenville, and they mentioned that, and I don't know when this was, what time scale we're looking at. They mentioned that they had over 500 trucks running in Nigeria. But the shocking part was that they mentioned that with that 500 trucks, they were barely able to meet 30% of their demand. That's why they keep expanding. So those places where you're saying that there are no gas, virtual pipeline is the solution. So by the time Greenville and other companies are able to build hubs, they're able to truck liquid natural gas to those places, and those people can convert that instantly into gas, right? And all it will need is proper scheduling, and then they will constantly have a refill process that will continuously make sure that they have gas to, run their turbines or run their system, right? And that's the way to go. And that's what Australia does. Because if you look at it, if you take a map of Australia and you look at the central part of Australia, there's nothing there apart from mines, salt mines, gold mines, all kinds of, precious metal mines, right? And the only way for, for these people to survive, previously they were all running on diesel. But ever since they discovered that LNG can be trucked to them as a virtual pipeline, they have all switched and keep diesel as a backup fuel. And that's basically what they're doing. So those customers in different parts of the country who do not have access to gas pipelines, right? If their operations are significant enough, they would eventually, and they want to make a huge change in their OPEX, right? Especially if they are energy-driven, an energy-driven industry. They will most likely go and speak to people like Greenville to come and put an end-to-end solution to them, into their system that provides them with, a virtual pipeline system, a gas system, a combustion system, even all the way to producing the power that they will need as efficiently as possible. No, not use of gas turbines, more like gas engines if they're a big company, and all that kind of thing, or even to use their existing system and do flex firing. If there is no LNG, they will fire diesel. If there is LNG, they fire LNG. You could have flex fuel systems, that can actually do those things. Companies like Wärtsilä provide it. So the solution lies in the virtual pipeline, right? Because if you want to build a pipeline from somewhere to one of your companies that you're talking about, it might not be able to pay for itself over the lifetime, over the next 20, 25 years. But with the virtual pipeline, I can redirect that truck as long as there's an access road to that point, and get that continuously delivered to that company over a period of time. So that's the way to go, right? And that's the model that I think Nigeria requires, because nobody is ready to go and invest in capital projects of building expansive gas networks, for domestic consumption. So the easy way to go, like the sell side, is to go for virtual pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your response. Dr. Malami, your hands is still up. I think.
Hello, Afam. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. I think I had a network glitch at the beginning. So thank you very much, boss. Like I said at the beginning, the lecture is going to be very, very interesting, very, very insightful and enlightening. Thank you for the opportunity. So I have a question, but my question is around the economics. Because as you rightly mentioned, Greenville has been expanding their territories in Nigeria. In fact, just recently, we have a power plant running in Maiduguri. So Greenville delivers gas all the way to Maiduguri, from Rumuji in Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. But the issue we have now is the cost. because for gas to power sector, as you all know that it is a regulated price. I think it's about $2.40 by the time you add the transportation fee pro NGC. So, but the gas we are buying for the power plant we have in Maiduguri, it costs around $13 per 1,000 scoop, which make the cost of running that power plant very, very, very expensive.
Good.
And if you are a businessman, for you to sell the power from that plant in order to break even, you have to target somewhere around maybe 1,300 per kilowatt hour. So compare that with the band A price of 230 something naira per kilowatt hour. So my question is how do we really crush the cost of getting gas via the virtual trucks?
Yeah.
That's the virtual pipeline. That's my question, sir. Thank you.
Yes. So this is a fantastic question, all right? So this is where you have already started with the basics. The basics is, right, regulation $2.40, actual $13.50, let's say for example. Now, I don't know the basis for the $2.40, but it's regulatory. But you can actually go in and have a total breakdown of the $13.50 to find out which elements contribute significantly to that $13.50, right? I want to believe that if that gas was supplied today from their plant in Rumuji to somewhere close to Rumuji, right? Or let's say 100 or 200 kilometers radius from Rumuji, they might be able to meet the $2.4 dollar per, whatever unit that we're using, right? So is it the distance? Is it the number of days that they apply? Is it so what is it that is making it to come to $13.50? There needs to be a clear breakdown, because it is that breakdown that will tell you whether, if there are potential customers in places like Maiduguri, Jigawa, Katsina, right? Maybe it is worth tapping into the nearest gas pipeline and doing a small project that brings it closer to a point where you can also come in and put in a small liquefaction facility, right? Very small, even smaller than the ones that they have there, just to be able to allow you take the gas and produce it very close to the end market. If you look at in the old days, the refineries were always situated closest to where the markets are. So that's why you have refineries in a place like Cologne in the center of town, because there's a huge population here, right? That requires heating oil, that requires cars, So the location was basically the driver. The good thing about this system is that you can make at a location and transport, or you can make close to location where you feel that there could be some sort of industrialization or industrial park. And if you go to the website of Greenville, you will see that they are already working with Nasarawa state government and Enugu state government to do things around that level. Maybe there are already gas pipelines that are very close by, and they just come in and put in either a huge storage facility where they can truck multiple trucks to that place and then continue to move from there to a final destination, or they can put in a small facility, single mist refrigerant, that can make very small amount of LNG, but still very efficient, like the one we saw in EDL in Australia. All right, very small thing. If you look at everything, looks like a small portable generator, right? And use that to supply, regional customer. And I'm sure you'll be able to crash this, maybe not get up to 2.4, but I'm sure you should be able to crash this significantly, right? So it's about opening up this course to see which are the elements that are contributing to it that will now help you understand how to optimize it. But it's a very good challenge to throw to economists to say, look, I want this cost to come down to 2.4. What is that we can do? And then we're here. And it might require some investment, right? And that might require some long-term agreement to say, okay, if we're going to get to maybe $3.50, are you going to back us for the next 10 years? So things like that might be required, Yeah.
Thank you so much, boss. I'm sorry, if I may, I have a small follow-up question.
Yes.
The breakdown around the cost, we know the breakdown actually. We know how much the feed gas cost of the feed gas,
yes.
And we also know the how much is going into the transportation. So largely here, the major contributor to the cost is the cost of transporting the LNG from Rome do. And again, because they need to incur some capex expenditure because they need to buy more trucks, and you know how a cryogenic truck is, how expensive it is.
Yes.
Putting those cryogenic trucks on the road all the way from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri on daily basis, you have like 3-4 trucks running from Maiduguri to Port Harcourt. So these are some of the things that actually make the cost to be too high. So, and again, the other thing that I wanted to ask about is the nature of the contract, the long-term contract. Because, honestly, after we signed the contract, we now realize that maybe we need to rethink because it's very expensive and we cannot be able to, let's say, break even if we continue that way. And then we have a penalty clause in the contract that you cannot just opt out unless if you are willing to pay 95% of the price as if you take or pay penalty.
Yeah, take or pay penalty.
So how do we go about that? Because honestly, we are now in a difficult situation. On one side, want to get out of this contract and then seek for alternative sources. And then on the other side is we have this take or pay penalty that we have to pay 95% of this amount for the remaining 19 or 18 years. So how do we now go out of this contract, or how do we going forward go into this, but in a shorter duration contract, not the kind of traditional long-term contracts?
Okay. So one thing that I saw in Australia, which might be useful, but again, it comes at whether it's something that will be acceptable to all the parties, is the fact that the Greenville trucks, right, are single carrier trucks. They carry what? 10, 20, 30 cubic meters? That's what they carry. The ones we saw in Australia have 2 or even 3 bobtails attached to them. So a driver traveling 1,500 kilometers in Australia, right, will be carrying 3 times what a Greenville driver in Nigeria will be carrying over the same distance. And that will make a significant dent on the final landing cost, because the value the volume that he transports over a given period of time is, significantly higher than what he would have transported if he goes on a single. But again, it now borders on security, on roads availability, and all that stuff, right? But that is the one way I think that you can actually use. So if you run the math, right, and say, if I take an additional, not even 3, if I go for an additional, I tow an additional bobtail, right, which is common, right, in outside the country, what does that do for the price of this? Does it take it down by half? Does it take it down by just 25%, right? And then see what that actually means for the business. And again, the 2.4, right, is it realistic in view of every other thing that you are seeing and the prices, right? Because there's a gas purchase price, right, that goes into that whole deal, right? And then you look at how much they need to put in. They also have to put in the cost of, because liquefaction is a heavily energy intensive business, right? So on the government side, is there something that can be done, right? Maybe in terms of waivers and incentives or acts or grants, that enables them to, significantly drop that price, because of maybe some allowances that they are getting from the government. So it has to come from both sides, right? But I think being able to move more at every given time should be able to help with that pricing. Might not resolve it, but it should help definitely.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to please can we hold on? Can we hold on? I would like to appeal that time is fast spent. And Mr. Patrick, hello.
Yes, I'm here. Please,
Okay,
I just want
would
to
like
quickly
that you
ask
mute your mic.
I'd like to just contribute to what he's saying.
Okay, Mr. Desmond.
Okay. Thank you. I'll make it
Please
really
go ahead.
quick.
Mr. Desmond, you're going to be the last question because We've spent so much time. So, Mr. Damon, please, you have the last question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, I'll make it real quick. Thank you very much for the very insightful presentation. I think it's very valued, and I just want to throw some thoughts to what you said, and also sort of add more context to the last question that you're trying to respond to. Absolutely, the benefits of LNGs is great. However, the pricing seems to be an issue for most developers, and of course, there are certain drivers that drive the costs. Just to put it very mildly, the feed gas cost is one of them. The cost for regasification is one of them. The margin of their profit is one of them. And then, of course, the cost of that transportation. So just to make it easy for sake of maths, higher volumes, of course, on a long-term CSA agreement, higher volumes would typically crash the prices if there is a good investment to take that volume to where it has to go to, just regardless of whatever costs of that gas would be. It's a volume-based game, so I think that should help to sort of put it in context. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can give Dr. Pastor Alifa some more virtual applause for his kind words. Dr. Pastor, any final words? Before we
just
wrap up?
to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to present. It's not easy for you to call somebody, so I really appreciate this, and it's also good to hear from the industry practitioners about pain points and where things are happening. We are largely outside the country, but we look a lot inwards, So whenever we see things that will be beneficial to our country, we always make sure we pass it around so that we can harness it and use it to make our place good. So pricing a big issue, but I'm sure it's something that we can crack. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, we switch gears to making you know that if you are not a member of SP Abuja, you should join SP Abuja today. Of course, you can see your screen where you can see on your screen where you can renew your membership. If you're already a member, of course, membership fee is 86,500 naira, while renewal fee is 69,500 naira. Kindly take a screenshot of the number of the membership chairman, engineer Ogenerume Ogolo, so that you can contact him for membership. Of course, the account details is also on the screen for your kind considerations and making of your payment. So we have the programs chair who will do the vote of thanks, but before that, we would like to hear Dr. Ikechukwu for any final remarks before we have the programs chair give the vote of thanks. Dr. Ikechukwu, please, the stage is yours.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Parker, thank you so much for beautiful one. When our people reach a stage where technical expertise that is needed to change the conversation, it shows clearly that we are getting somewhere. Just to harness the best of our mind. Right? And there's a future here. And we are seeing that regardless of the challenges, we can push through those challenges, make energy available, affordable, and accessible. Those are like my last point. Not to make energy available, affordable, accessible, possible, and start with all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And of course, to wrap up the meeting, I'd like to call on the program's chair, Professor Kapaya, today for her closing remarks. Prof, the stage is yours.
Good evening, everyone. And I'm sorry I came late into the meeting. I had another meeting and I had to rush home. So I was a bit late. In fact, the meeting had gone more than halfway before I was able to join. But for the last bit I listened to, it was educative, it was detailed, it was insightful. Thank you very much, Mr. Pascal, for this very insightful presentation. And the way you took your time to give detailed explanation to every question that was asked. Very impressive. So we want to thank you for coming to give us this presentation. We want to thank you that all the communication we've been asking, send us this, send us that, and we got prompt responses from you. We thank you for that. And to my board member, section chair, publicity, thank you for putting all of this together to make it happen. And for all attendants, and those that did attend, for those that didn't attend, they actually missed a lot. And for those that attended, join us next month for another edition of our monthly technical meeting. So thank you, Mr. Pascal, once again, and a very good evening to you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a quick photograph. Please turn on your video cameras. Let's have a video shot. Can you turn on the video cameras? Let's have a quick shot and see all of your beautiful faces from wherever you are joining us from. Please turn on your video cameras. Please turn on your video cameras. Okay? So when I say SPE Abuja, you're going to respond with culture of excellence with your thumbs up. Culture of excellence with your thumbs up. I can see our council chair. We celebrate you, ma'am. Thank you for staying to the end of the call. Thank you. So SPE Abuja, you respond with culture of excellence with your thumbs up. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. SPE Abuja.
Culture of excellence.
Your voice, unmute your mic. There's no excellence in your voice. So. Okay, last time, SPE Abuja.
Culture of excellence.
I like that. I like that. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. 5 minutes for networking, and then I end the call. 5 minutes of networking. Thank you.